Call to order the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission regular meeting for May 22nd. Good to see each and every one of you here this morning. We ask that everyone please stand at this time for a prayer and a pledge of allegiance led by Commissioner, who did I ask this morning? Marvin Whitworth to do that. Marvin?
How quickly you forget my name. Let us pray. Holy Father, we are indeed grateful for the opportunities that you give us, for the beautiful day that we have, and for all the many wonderful blessings that our lives are filled with. Father, we pray your blessings upon this meeting this morning. We pray that the decisions that we make will be best for our community and for its citizens. We pray for all those who have leadership in our community, that all the decisions made will be best for our county. We pray too for the national and regional leaders, that they will look to you for the guidance and the things that they need to do. Father, we pray that you be with us and bless us as we go forward. Forgive us as we fail you, in Christ's name. Amen. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's good to see each and every one of you here this morning. At this time, we'll have our roll call and determination of quorum.
Jim Averwater. Jeff Phillips. Present. Mike Cush.
Present.
Lee Bogle. Here. Charlotte P. Here. Trey Gooch. David Jones. Here. Chip Pinion. Marvin Whitworth.
Here.
Jim Thompson.
Here.
Pettis Reed.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, we ask for the approval of our minutes, and I'll go to my Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have reviewed the minutes of the April 10th meeting and found those to be in good order. Therefore, I make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. Have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, minutes have been approved. Any items withdrawn or deferred? No items withdrawn or deferred. We'll move directly into our new business, beginning with item 6. Item A, submitted for final plat approval. Item 1 is Clifton One Lot Subdivision, 23-2004, one lot on 3.14 acres, zoned RM, located along Seminary Road. Carl Clifton, applicant, includes a variance to the fire hydrant. Mossy.
Yes, sir. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. As you stated, the applicant is proposing to divide about 3.5 acres from the parent tract. This new lot will contain the existing house and accessory structures. This new lot will be subject to the subdivision requirements, as it's less than 5 acres, which is what's necessitating the need for the fire hydrant being within 1,000 feet. Information from CUD indicates that a hydrant cannot be sustained at this location, so they are asking for a waiver to that provision as part of this approval. As far as the plat goes, our comments have been addressed. The plat itself is in good order. The only outstanding item is the fire hydrant waiver request. With that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff?
Doug, does staff recommend this waiver?
This is consistent, yes, with past practice, and this is an existing house. You know, they're not building anything on the lot itself, so this is all existing.
Thank you. I move to approve with staff comments.
Motion to approve. Have a second.
I have a question.
Lee?
On, it seems it says remaining land is 5 acres. What was the original size of the lot?
Well, I think this one's a little over 3, so it was 8 plus about 8.5 acres total.
All right. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? It is approved. Moving down to item B, submitted for site plan approval. Item 1 is the CUD Tower Site, number 23-3014. Construction of a 285-foot emergency communications tower, equipment shelter, and generator on approximately 4 acres zoned RM, located at 3481 Halls Hill Pike, City of Murfreesboro, is the applicant. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. The applicant is proposing to construct a lattice-style communications tower about 285 feet in height on the subject property. This did receive Board of Zoning Appeal approval, I believe, back in April. There is a CUD water storage tank on this property. This tower is going to be, it's not a cell tower in the sense of it's going to have commercial like Verizon, AT&T, those kind of things. This is for city and county use. It's going to provide EMS, fire departments, police department, sheriff department, public works, things like that, with the ability to communicate. They also have some, associated equipment, shelters, generators, and everything on the property as well within the 80 by 80 compound, 80 foot by 80 foot compound. This is actually part of a 5-tower plan, and once this installation is finished, a complete loop between all the towers will be added. We have sent comments to the design engineer for this. Our comments have been addressed. Really, the site plan at this point is in good order. We do have representatives here from the city. Mr. Bill Terry is here if there's any questions, along with a representative from Motorola, again, should there be any questions, but we recommend approval of this.
Commissioners, any comments or questions?
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion to approve. Have a second. Commissioner Bogle. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, it is approved. Moving now to item number 2, Lascassas Estates, Amenity Area, 233016, new construction of an amenity area including a pool, clubhouse, and associated parking on approximately 5.3 acres, zone PUD. Ellington Residential is the applicant. Mr. Damasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. As you stated, the applicant is proposing to construct an amenity area to serve the Lascassas Estates subdivision, which was approved preliminarily back in March of 2022. This is consistent with their approved pattern book as well. Most of our comments were housekeeping in nature. There are still a handful of things that they need to do. Again, these are all housekeeping in nature, just nothing that I feel needs to hold up the approval of the site plan. Of course, this will be developed as part of the ongoing construction with the subdivision. I believe somebody here, if there's questions? Yes, there is somebody in the audience in case there's questions to this, but staff is comfortable with this moving forward, so we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for staff? Commissioner Whitworth?
Yes, sir, Doug, I'll ask a question. Aren't they moving dirt on the front of this property now?
They are, yes, sir.
Mr. Averwater?
Question for staff, particularly engineering. I know you guys are typically all over this thing. As I recall, this property and especially this detention area had some drainage issues. Has the addition of this asphalt and the higher ground that looks like it kind of extends into the detention area, will that affect any of their water drainage situation and their ability to hold it?
No, sir. It was, the pond was a volume-sensitive pond. You can kind of see it at the bottom of the screen here, and it was sized to incorporate the impervious area for the amenity center. This is their stormwater management area. Like I said, it's volume-sensitive, so we've had them oversize it to make sure it can collect the volume of water, not just the rate of runoff. Yes, sir.
That was a question of mine too, Commissioner, so I'm glad you asked that. So,
I was going to ask, I remember this, the water as well, and this was a very deep retention pond, correct?
Yes, I think it was about 3 Demasis tall. It was, sorry. Oh, sorry, that's a new term of measurement we use, sorry.
I'm not quite that short.
I guess my question is about the safety. I know the pool will have a fence around it, but, if that's right up to that detention, I just want to make sure it's safe for the kids playing in the pool and in
Yes.
that area?
Yes, let's go back to the pool site. Yeah, it will have a fenced-in area. There is a walking trail planned around the stormwater management area, but you can see the slopes are at 3-to-1, which are pretty easy to climb out of, I should say. And they're pretty, not real flat, but they're flat enough you can run a riding mower over it. So we're happy with that.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Have a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? It is approved. We'll move now into item 7, staff reports and other business. Mr. Demasi.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. We do have a couple of items for discussion today. And the first one we're going to talk about are proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding adding some regulations for transfer stations. As you know, there's been a lot of discussion lately regarding the county's desire to construct a transfer station to help with solid waste issues. Now, after looking through our zoning ordinance and having discussions with the mayor's office, as well as Bishop Wagner, our solid waste director, who is present for questions today, we informed them that, we don't have any regulations in our zoning ordinance at this time for transfer stations, so we wanted to go ahead and come up with some. So what is on your iPads and also the big screen before you is kind of our sort of, for lack of a better way to say it, our first stab at coming up with some regulations. Of course, we've looked at some communities around us that have regulations, so we adaptively reused some of the regulations that they had. It's a fancy term of borrowing, I guess. And met with Bishop on this. I wanted to make sure that what we were proposing, that we would be able to meet whatever sites that we might be looking at. I didn't want to create some regulations and then have us not be able to actually use the site for that particular reason. But what you have before you here, and I'll just kind of briefly run through. The first section are just some definitions. Again, this was Bishop helped with several of these, with the haul roads, transfer station operational area, and then actually defining a transfer station or trash compaction operation. The next section is just kind of a catch-all dealing with all state and federal regulations. I want to make sure that whatever is being proposed is going to meet those standards. Then we come into specific standards. We have an operational plan. We also worked with our building codes office and our fire marshal's office. You'll see that there are some regulations in there regarding a fire safety emergency plan being approved through the county fire marshal's office. The one that I really wanted to pay special attention to when we were looking at this was the area and setback requirements. We're looking at a minimum lot area of 15 acres. All structures and activities except for parking, fencing, and offices shall meet the setbacks that you see listed there on your iPads. And then screening and buffering, of course, would be in conformance with our ordinance. We also put some general mitigation requirements in there as far as our performance standards, EPSC plans, for drainage and those kind of things, because we want our engineers to be involved in that as well, security fencing. And then we put in several things in there regarding state and regulations through TCA, Tennessee Code Annotated, as far as transfer from one waste from one vehicle to another, and then again some fire protection language in there as well, and then some additional language on odor and the haul roads and the traffic specifically, how we want to see kind of surfaces and what kind of design we want to see on those. And then we would propose to classify this as an extensive impact facility, which is allowed by right in the heavy industrial zone, not by any special permit or anything, but just allowed by right in the HI zone. So it's limited in its application. So that's kind of our first stab at it. Since these are proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance, if this does move forward, it'll have to have a public hearing before the Planning Commission and then final approval by the Board of Commissioners. So at this point, I'd just like to open it up for discussion. If anybody has any questions, again, Bishop Wagner is here to answer some more of the technical details because he knows this a whole lot better than I do. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So Doug, is this Is this more intensive than the tradition, or to the regular HI?
Well, these, if it was just allowed by right in HI, there wouldn't be any additional standards. So what we would propose, we probably put these in our use-specific standards in Chapter 11. So if somebody comes to do a transfer station, they would have to abide by these conditions as well as being zoned heavy industrial. So yes.
Let me see if I heard that right. Anyone other than the county wanting to build a transfer station, these regulations would apply
That's
to that
correct.
particular situation
That's
as well.
correct. Mm-hmm.
That 15 acres, is that kind of standard for the industry? Is it like other counties maybe have that same thing?
Well, the 15 acres did come from one of the other ordinances we looked at, yes. Bishop, if you want to address that.
Director Wagner, let you come forward, and you might help us with some of these.
Morning, Commissioners. Bishop Wagner, Rutherford County Solid Waste Director. Yes, Chairman, 15 is a standard. It's actually a little bit larger than most places are by about 4 or 5 acres.
Built another one 10 years from now, it would have to be on 15 acres as well?
Yes, sir.
Would have to be, or would have to adjust our standards?
And meet all of the requirements for the buffer and et cetera.
Is this consistent with what Murfreesboro's put together?
I believe it is.
Okay. Identical?
It's not exactly identical because they have another process that's happening along that area as well, but I'd have to look with what they have. Do we?
I don't know if the city has any specifically on transfer stations. Yeah.
But it is consistent with
It appears to be,
Murfreesboro's
yes.
plan? Okay, thank you.
While we have the director up here, if there are other questions that you may be thinking of, I know one, we were talking about this last week sometime, and one question I had is the limit of time that you would allow garbage to be located within a transfer station, and we found that you'll notice there where you got the mitigation requirements and things of this type, you have the Tennessee Code annotated that's in there. A lot of these regulations are already within state regs. So this is some of the things that we have implemented within what our code will be doing also. So we'll be following a lot of the Tennessee Code in this too.
And quite frankly, if I may kind of dovetail on with that, it's a lot easier to reference those regulations rather than try to spell them out in ours, because if something were to change on the state level, then we'd have to change it at the local level. So when you're just referencing the actual codes and sections, if they change something, then it's already changed as far as art by reference. So, and I do want to clarify, Mr. Phillips, just to make sure that I understood your comments about, you know, if somebody else coming. These apply, like I said, these would apply to anybody else, but they also do apply to the county as well. So it's universal in its scope.
Jeff, FYI, the city's proposed transfer station on Butler, that sits on approximately 21 acres.
Commissioner Cush, I believe that's already annexed into the city. Is that annexed or they're preparing to? I know for sure.
It is. It's annexed. Yeah.
Any future sites would have to be rezoned to what classification?
It'd be heavy industrial, HI.
Any other questions for the director?
This question's directed to staff, so is there anything that you need for us to do with this today, or this is something I understand has to come back to us again formally with a public hearing? So today, do we make a motion to move this forward?
If you're okay with what we're proposing, then what we can do is schedule this for a public hearing at June. We have a pretty light agenda next month, so we can put this on the June 12th meeting. I mean, in the meantime, if you guys think of anything else that you had questions about or wanted to see in here, we can always make changes to this. So, I mean, if you're okay with this, just kind of a nod of assent, I guess, would be good, just to let us know to move it forward.
I'd have one question in terms, I've been to one in Estill Springs, been to one in Fayetteville doing maintenance work. Should we be concerned with having these, I understand the minimum requirements, but should we be concerned with having a maximum requirement?
That's an excellent question. In terms of a transfer station, the building itself, the structure itself, if you have a 30,000 square foot building, you can accept up to 2,500 to 3,000 tons of waste coming in daily. That's a pretty substantial amount of waste. In fact, Middle Point landfill currently is permitted to accept 4,500 tons of waste. So if we're talking about the city having a transfer station and the county having a transfer station, 30,000 square foot building would more than suffice for the size of that. We can adequately fit that 30,000 square foot building well within this footprint. In fact, we'd have enough space in the 15 acres for detention, retention areas and stormwater abatement, as well as leachate collection and processing area there for us to have that there. So I personally don't think that we would be looking at an issue where somebody would come in and need something any larger than what this is. In fact, I think we would probably see a lot of interest in something that fits the footprint but is a much smaller stamp within that footprint.
That's where I was going with that. I'm thinking as a neighbor, if I've got a fellow that's close to me and he's got 150 acres, and then all of a sudden we've got a dump site out there that's hard to manage, that'd be the only thing I would be thinking that we, as a neighbor, would be concerned with having too much waste coming in and out. If a smaller footprint, like what's at Estill Springs or in Fayetteville, would work great. But if you went 10 times that size, I could see where these commissioners on here would be getting some phone calls. That's all. That's the only thing I would think.
I think that brings up an interesting point. Would a private hauler be allowed to bring in trash from other counties and using our transfer station and then sending them out of the county again, or you know, particularly, I suppose Davidson County is the biggest user of our local landfill. Would they also be using our transfer stations here?
Well, I can answer that pretty clearly. No. This transfer station and the plan for transfer station and the waste that we manage is for Rutherford County waste, Rutherford County commercial and residential waste that's generated here. We are also in a multi-county region with Warren, Coffee, and Caney counties that an interlocal agreement for use of the transfer station may be something that would get discussed in that aspect, but could maybe not. But under no circumstances will we continue the activities of accepting out-of-county waste as part of the model going forward.
And I think my concern comes with perhaps a private hauler, so, you know, this becoming a business opportunity for someone and creating their own transfer station and bringing large volumes in that aren't regulated and putting the wear and tear on our roads and whatnot.
That's correct, and that's part of the reasoning behind the push to get, thank you, to keep the waste that's generated within the county managed within the county and not accept any imported waste in, was because we're inundated with traffic with 53-foot trailers and other haulers, private industry that are coming in from other counties and contributing to waste and traffic here. There will be private haulers and private activity that will work to collect the waste that's within the county and possibly within the multi-county region that we're in. But it's a third of the amount of traffic that we're currently seeing that's coming in from Davidson County, Wilson, and Williamson.
Other discussion? Well, if not, if it's just in agreement that we bring this back in June for a public hearing, we'll do so.
Okay.
Do that.
Thank you.
You have another item for us?
Yes, sir, I do. And thank you for the discussion on the transfer stations. As you said, we'll go ahead and bring these forward for a public hearing next month. The last item on our agenda, and this is something that was discussed at length at the last meeting and even some of the meeting before, where we got into the discussion of private easements and flag lots. So what we wanted to do was put together just a brief presentation on what our current regulations are, show you some examples of developments that we have seen with these regulations, and then maybe some options, and really just opening it up for just general discussion about what you'd like to see, what we'd like to see changed, those kind of things. So, yeah, thanks. Thank you. Excuse me just a second while we shift drivers here. Okay, so again, just kind of want to go over our current regulations, and you'll see I've got flag lots on there too, because that does play a part in all this. Go through some examples, again, options, and then questions and discussion. So first, we're going to jump into our current regulations. Right now, there are basically three different ways that we see private easements come before us. The first way is for a private easement that we don't really have to approve nor even review. In these situations, you've got a private street/road easement that has to be at least 50 feet wide. Again, that's the easement itself. That's not the actual driveway. That's just the width of the easement. The easement can only be for the use of one tract of land, and that tract of land has to be a minimum of 5 acres. Something like that can be done by deed division. We'll see that in situations where somebody has, let's say, 50 acres of land, and they want to carve off 5 acres maybe for a child or a family member or something like that. They've got plenty of road frontage, but the soil site happens to be way in the back of the property. So they want to carve off 5 acres and have a 50-foot access easement to it. That's really all it's required. They're not having multiple tracts. It's just one easement, one tract of land. That's not required to have any kind of approval from us. They can just go ahead and do that through a deed division. The ones that we start seeing, and the ones that you're probably more familiar with, are those that do require approval from either a staff standpoint or planning commission. Again, as far as the width of the easement itself, that doesn't change. It's 50 feet, and the tracts of land have to be at least 5 acres in size. However, they cannot have any more than 3 tracts of land involved. Usually how we look at that is 3 tracts off of that easement. That becomes more of a minor subdivision at that point. They're also supposed to develop some sort of an HOA or some sort of a instrument to provide perpetual maintenance to the road, and again, a subdivision plat is required. Most of the time you see these come before you, not so much because of the lots that are involved, because if they're over 5 acres, it's the fact that a lot of the time these tracts of land are so far off the road that they can't meet the subdivision requirement, the regulations as far as the fire hydrant distance. So you can have, a half-a-mile driveway with a couple of tracts of land off in the back. While it meets the regulations, they can't put a fire hydrant out there that would be within 1,000 feet of those tracts. So that's typically when we see those come before the Planning Commission. If it's a situation where they meet all of our regulations and no waiver is required, again, staff has the ability up to 5 lots or tracts, however you want to say it, to approve those administratively, but most of these don't fall into that situation just because of the need for the fire hydrant easement, or I'm sorry, waiver. And then the third kind, and we don't see these too terribly often, but this is if approval is required through a planned development. This is for any private road street developments that exceed 3 lots. Rezoning to a planned development is required, which means it has to go through the Planning Commission and then approval at the Board of Commissioners. The lot size, your width, everything else is determined using the pattern book, so these lots can be less than 5 acres in size. In fact, you'll see one of the examples we use is the Del Webb community, Southern Harmony. That was a private lot subdivision, private road subdivision, excuse me. So they had to come through the entire process for that. In this situation, private streets do have to be built to the same standards as public streets, even if the county is not taking them over and maintaining them. We still do require in these situations that they are built to the same specification. And then again, the developer has to establish some sort of a maintenance regime, protocol, if you will, usually involving an HOA for maintenance to those streets. And flag lots, because we usually see these type of developments, we'll see a couple examples here in just a minute. Just to give you an example of what a flag lot is, you can kind of see on the schematic there, I did my best to kind of highlight the flag lot, kind of surrounded it in red there. You can see it's got a stem, if you will, or a flagpole that goes out to the street. They're required to have 50 foot of access to the street, 50 foot of road frontage, and then that extends back into the flag, the larger part of the lot. So a lot of the times with private easements, we do see them in conjunction with flag lots, so that's why I wanted to make sure this was part of that. Now, when we look at setbacks, this is just for your information, we don't measure setbacks from, like the front setback, especially from the street. We don't measure them on the stem, we measure them on the flag, the larger portion of the lot. So just to give you some examples, this is an example that just went through the Planning Commission last month. This is Prairie Sunset. You can see on here that they've got, it's hard to tell looking at this. This is on your iPads, by the way, if I neglected to say that. But they've got two 50-foot ingress-egress easements on this. And you can see what they have, and I'm not sure, hopefully you can see this on the screen. But this track, this stem here goes all the way back to this track here, this larger track. And they've got two tracks off of that. And then the second one right below it is for this lot. So the stem actually belongs to this tract here, and then you've got two more off of that. So that was one example. This is one that was located off of Horton Highway. This went through the Planning Commission several months back. I think it was last year sometime. This one had a couple of lots that were less than 5 acres but had their own road frontage. But you can see here, lot 1 had road frontage, but you can see there's a private easement here that was for this lot, and I believe also this lot. And then there was a second easement that was for this one and this one. So again, similar situation. They're not backed up to each other, the easements, but that's how they're getting access to these lots here. This, back to the flag lots now. This is Debbie's Way. This is on Wayside Road. This was approved several years ago. But you can see what they've done, what they've done here is they've got, each of these lots actually has road frontage. Lots 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Each is a flag lot that goes back to Wayside Road, but it's accessed through a common drive. So there's not separate driveways for these lots. They all have cross access to this tract of land right here, and they all share that driveway. But you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. 50 foot at the road. It does allow to narrow down just a little bit, and then you've got the opened up area back here. Maribeth Meadows is a similar situation. This is off of Swamp Leanna Road. Again, this is several years old, but you can see lot 1 has its own frontage, as all of them do. Lot 1's not a flag lot, but the rest of them are. And you can see that although they all have their own road frontage, they are sharing a common drive, which was given a road name, and these lots are actually accessed or addressed off of that private drive. And then finally, I know this is, you're never going to be able to see any real detail with this, but this is Southern Harmony PUD. This is a private road subdivision, and this was approved through plan development. All those roads have to be built to county road specification, but the county is not going to be the ones maintaining those. So we kind of kicked around just several options, and again, these are really more for discussion than anything. We're really just trying to get an idea where the Planning Commission would like to go with this and what options they'd like to possibly look more into. So we don't have any regulations for you to look at today. But some possible options that we could look at would be to look at possible design standards for private streets and driveways that serve multiple lots, maybe not up to the same standards as a public street, but something in between a gravel drive and a full-fledged county road specification. Do we want to look at maybe limiting the number of flag lots in a subdivision? You see those couple that we did look at, there were about 6, 7 lots on those particular developments, and each one of them was a flag lot. Our previous zoning resolution actually limited the number of flag lots to 20%. We didn't carry that over to the new ordinance when we did this 10 years ago. We've seen some regulations also that look at the number of flag lots allowed in a subdivision by road classification. If it's a larger road with more capacity, you can have a couple more. If it's a smaller road, maybe not as many, something like that. You could limit the number of flag lots that are served by a common driveway. Like, think about those two, Debbie's Way and Maribeth Meadows. Maybe you only look at a certain number of flag lots that can be served by a common drive. Do not allow multiple or back-to-back access easements on one piece of property. We saw that with Prairie Sunset, where you had one 50-foot easement next to another 50-foot easement, and they share a common drive. We also saw in some regulations, one example out of Ohio, to not allow flag lots to be used as access to other lots. That's an option. So those are just some ideas that we kind of brainstormed more than anything. Again, at this point, we just kind of want to open it up for discussion with the Planning Commission, just to kind of get their thoughts, their ideas, just kind of point us in the direction you'd like us to go. You know, during our last meeting, I know Mike, our engineer, you know, he had said a few things and said, you know, if there's something you don't like, let us know what it is and we can work to change it. This is that opportunity for you to kind of let us know what are things you like about our current easements or regulations, things you don't like, things you'd like to change. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that's pretty much concludes the presentation, so I'll open it up for discussion as you see fit.
Commissioners, it's your opportunity. If you have any opinions or suggestions or whatever we're talking about, because we knew what we had last time in all of this, and I already see people coming to the mic already. So,
Yeah,
Commissioner Avelwater.
I think we're going to have a lot of opinions, and I think mine's going to be for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I just don't want to see us enact something that increases the number of driveways, because every time we come up with something, there's a way around it, and then we end up with more driveways on side by side. So I think we have to be really careful about that. Our objective should be to minimize the number of driveways without restricting people's use of their land. I mean, obviously, if you have 50 or 60 acres of land that you don't need and you want to split it up, you want people to be able to get to that, but you don't want to split it up into 10 different tracks and have 10 different driveways, for sure.
Commissioner?
There were a lot of thoughts that went through my mind when we had this discussion last time. The example of flag lots, where you've got this one lot that's on there, I'm just fine with that. I am. The examples on Prairie Sunset, this is one that I think we had last month, where we had this road running right down the middle of it that they weren't calling a road. Those are the things that bother me. What would be the impact if we limited one flag lot per development? Would that eliminate the kind of issues that we're talking about as it relates to driveways instead of roads?
Well, in this situation, as you can see, and I've got this on the screen, Prairie Sunset, it's a limited amount of frontage. If you only allowed one flag lot on there, I mean, just looking at it, you probably would limit the number of lots that they would have, because they could only have up to 3 off of that easement then. So the tracks would have been a little larger than what you're seeing here. So I don't know how they could have gotten anything more if it's just one flag lot. So I think that would have reduced the number of lots. Yeah.
Doug, my question is, just eliminate the driveways and put in a road. Put in a road. You would not eliminate any lots at all, correct?
Well, they wouldn't, if they had to build an actual road, now if you're talking a county road, would they have to?
I don't care whether it's a county road or a private road, I don't care, but put in a road. I know the reason to not do that is cut down on expense, but in my mind as a planner, okay, it's not a good plan. What I'd like to see is us look at the future as we continue to grow and grow and grow and say, what's a good plan? That's not a good plan. Put in a road. I don't care whether it's county standards or otherwise, but if you put in a road, you'd eliminate the need for all those flag lots.
I mean, putting in an actual, I mean, regardless if it's a, I mean, I think we need to kind of flesh that out a little bit. If it's a county road, then I think you're correct. It would eliminate the need for flag lots at that point. However, they would also probably have to have more lots on it in order to afford the cost of the road and still be able to sell the lots. I mean, that's just, that's just part and parcel with it, which is fine, provided they meet the minimum requirements of the zoning district. Now, if we looked at the situation and considered an idea of maybe, okay, if it's not a public road standard, but maybe for the limited number of lots that are on here, do we look at like a standard somewhere between a public road and just throwing gravel down that'll wash away at the first rainstorm that comes by? You know, do we look at some sort of a reduced standard for something like that? I mean, I don't know if that eliminates the need for flag lots at that point because they're still private, but that's an option as well. So, I mean, it's a good suggestion. It's just how do we want to flesh it out?
Once again, just to follow up, my concern is not what we've done or what we're doing, but what we're going to be doing as time goes by and our county continues to grow. I can see the future where people move into these things and it's okay for 10 years and all of a sudden it's not okay. You run into all these issues with neighbors as homes sell and resell. You run into all these issues with neighbors and people are going to be asking those questions. What was the county thinking when they approved something like this? That's my concern as we go forward in the future. I want to see roads and not flag lots with multiple driveways running side by side. It's just a vision of mine. And once again, it may not be a vision of all the other commissioners that are here, and I will certainly acquiesce to anything that this commission comes up with. But I just like the thought of, if you go back to that example of flag lots, you've just got one. And I don't have an issue with that at all. No issues at all. But when it comes to multiple flag lots, with all of these driveways running down, it's just maybe a pet peeve of mine. And I'm sorry if it is, but it is. And I'd like to see us add some, I'd like to see us grow up. I'd like to see us become the county that we should be. And that is restricting those type of situations, just like the one that you've got up there. It could be improved by putting in a road.
That one that you're talking about there, I just happened to pull it up myself, sitting here looking at it. You know, it looks like a meat counter of tomahawk steaks. I mean, that's what it is, and it sort of goes right into Commissioner Averwater says there. You got a lineup of driveways coming out on that road right there at one time, and I could see where somebody coming in late from a party could get mixed up in which driveway I turn in, and something like that. But I'm just those right there. I think you could plan possibly something different or do something there. I know we had a situation a few years back where somebody was going to do something similar, and the commission here actually suggested, can't you do something better than this? And they did. They come back and did a whole different planning session with what they did with their development, and I can go by that now and see that it just looks so much better. But flag lots like this, I think we have a problem right there and what we're doing. It's easy, it's simple, and it works that way, but basically, is it planning and what you're trying to do? And I think that's what Commissioner Phillips is saying there too. Commissioner Bogle?
Some of the points that Doug brought up, the possible options, I circled design standards for private access. I think we can do some lesser than county road standards that would be reasonable cost to those types of developments. Disallowance of back-to-back easements, that was one that I marked that I think that would help us out in consolidating those roads and driveways. A couple of things I wrote down just from a traffic standpoint in my background in traffic. Reduction of conflict points, as Commissioner Averwater. We could use that as a way to justify. I wrote down at first standards of balance, balancing your site, making the site functional, efficient, and pleasing. But those are subjective terms a lot of times. So reduction of conflict points would be something we could stand on to say we're doing this in the name of reducing those. If there's, with the county roads, there could be site distance issues, there could be volume issues, there could be different things, or finding the driveway, like you said, finding if there's 6 driveways, what's the chances of me going down the wrong one? So in the name of public safety and traffic conflict points, I think we can hang our hat on that to say we need a better layout, and that helps the subjective part of we don't like the way this looks, but here's why. And so those are the couple of things that I identified that I think would help us out. And I pulled up Debbie's Way as well, and they meet the regulations and what we need, and that's where I have a hard time not approving those because they meet our regulations. Right. But I think we need to move forward for the future to do better.
Chairman, can I make a comment? Chairman Phillips, you are not wrong. We, as Building Codes Department, get the opportunity to visit these sites years after they've been approved and years after they've been established to do building inspections on the homes that are established down there. And sometimes we go down these private roads and there are potholes that you could bury a car in. And when we ask the homeowners, who takes care of these roads, they say they can't get the homeowners to come together, and one person incurs the majority of the cost, or a couple of homeowners incur the majority of the cost, and they can't come together, especially once the houses sell and then they're purchased by new homeowners.
Well, I'm sorry. There are maintenance issues there as well, because those driveways, say like the one on Debbie's Way, if you have somebody not mowing their part of the easement, or somebody comes in and plants crepe myrtles versus somebody that comes in and plants shrubs that aren't maintained, and then they're encroaching, it just causes all kinds of conflicts with the neighbors. So,
Mr. Chairman, I agree with what they say. It looks like we need to work on our definition of road, private, county, driveway. I think this came out last month. What are our definitions of roads to go along with our regulations?
I like that idea Commissioner Phillips mentioned of maybe one flag. I know it's going to be angst to some folks, but we are in a changing time. We're in a changing community. I moved back home in 2002. I was kind of laughing with a former neighbor that I had on this 13 or 14 lot strip. Got a young teenager now mowing where I used to live at. The adjoining neighbor has flagged the property line so this young teenager won't get over on his property. I'm telling you, that's the times we live in. I always mowed over on the other lot just so I made sure I mowed my yard. I guess this teenager was doing the same thing, but now there's flags. It looks horrible. You ride by, you got little flags warning you, don't get over here. This is my yard. I guess flags, but dead on. I'm hearing we don't even know how to mow the right-of-ways. We don't know how to maintain the right-of-ways. And one flag, I say we do some planning here and work this out.
Doug, is it possible to put a restriction on the number, such as 1? And then if there's a developer that has a special exception to that there could be an exception presented to either this commission or BZA or something like that?
Yeah, I think what could happen, and I'll kind of summarize here when we get done what I'm hearing, so make sure we're all on the same page here. But what we're looking at here would probably be primarily changes to the subdivision regulations. As such, I think we could build something in there that in exceptional circumstances like you're talking about, the developer could ask for a waiver to those provisions, kind of like they do for fire hydrant requirements, or a tract of less than 5 acres on a private easement, something like that. I'm not sure if we'll have to take any changes to the zoning regulations at this point, but everything I think that we're talking about right now we could handle within the subdivision regulations. So yes, I think that could be a possibility, to put some restrictions, and then if there's exceptional circumstances, have them request a waiver. Doesn't mean they'll get it. You know, they have to be able to prove why it's exceptional, why it's harmful to their development, other than just from a financial standpoint. But there is that ability to make that request.
Mr. Cush?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been touched on a couple of times, but I want to explore it just a hair deeper. As far as the design standards for private streets, I'm not sure what that is and what really the definition of a private street is, but my opinion is if a fire truck, an ambulance, any kind of a rescue, or any sheriff's equipment, or even a garbage truck would have to go down a private street, then I would be totally against changing any design standards less than what our current county road standards would be, because that equipment and those people need to be guaranteed is not the right word, but assured that the pavement thickness, the base thickness, the proper culverts are underneath the road for a resilient in and out in case of flooding, in case of emergencies, that they've got the same road or street standard that they can get in and out of for environmental issues, fire issues, safety issues. And I would be totally against putting some substandard pavement section or substandard piping underneath those private streets if county equipment still had to reach those people.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Doug. On the subdivision that's up in front of us there with the easements down one driveway, the private road would eliminate those easements?
No, I think the easements would, if it were a public road, then I think you could eliminate it. If it's a private road, the easements are still there because it has to belong to somebody.
Even if we require a private road on a situation like this, the 50-foot right-of-way easement still has to go back to every lot?
Right, that road has to belong to one of the lots. Because you would just, with a public road, it's just considered right of way. If it's a private road, it has to belong to one of those, one of the flag lots, really, is what would happen.
I'm not sure I understand that. What if someone built a gated community, had 20 lots, nice homes, gated community, private road? Does that road have to belong to somebody?
Well, it typically, at that point, it belongs to an HOA. It's all considered common area. I mean, I guess in that regard, you know, you could say it's common area at that point. I suppose that is true.
So that lot that we've been talking about there, you put an HOA in, they could put in a road, and it could meet all those standards. It would have to meet all those standards that would require, like Commissioner Cush was talking about. We require HOAs all the time for all kinds of things. So if we did that, David, I think if we did that, the HOA would be responsible for the road, and whoever runs the HOA board could require all of the HOA members to participate in the maintenance of that road, just like they would in some type of a retention pond or something like that.
So what I'm hearing you say is in the situation like Mike's got up on the screen right there, this is actually on Central Valley Road. Rather than the road itself being part of somebody's lot, in a situation like this, it could just be considered a common area, similar to what we would see in like Southern Harmony or something like that. I guess
I wouldn't consider it anything else. I wouldn't consider it belonging to somebody. It belongs to that community, and it should be that community's responsibility, in essence, requiring an HOA. there's been a lot of discussion about cost, and I understand that it does that. The cost of development, I know it would be more, but the cost of the county providing the services for that is also extremely high. So that's what I'm looking for as far as us developing for the future, to make sure that this county not only is built for the future, but also taking under consideration the cost that the county may end up having to assume at some point in time. Just like Tanya was talking about earlier, you know, you have all these people arguing all the time, and they're going to look to us as a county to come up with an answer for all these things. Let's just answer those questions right off the bat.
Mike, if you don't mind, go back to what you had there, that overview where you had that on Central Valley Road. But originally come out, you had all the flag lots that were approved there, but yet they put in a road. They put that in there. But basically what has been approved there, those easements are still there, right?
Yes, and those tracts of land, I mean, you obviously can't see it out on the field, but you can see the property lines. Yeah, they're all there, and they all have cross-access easements to that.
There,
yes,
whatever.
That's right.
So that's an HOA probably. An HOA. Yeah. Wonder if somebody in that HOA all of a sudden said, I'm not going to play ball. They've got an easement. They say, I'm going to build my own. And then you got somebody down here, that easement's going right through their front yard. Now, I know that, you know, that's a nice looking road. They're doing pretty good with it. They're doing there. But now this is just, I see this every day when people call me and tell me that, hey, we've got we got an easement here side by side, and John down here is running his truck through there at the wrong time of night, coming by my house, waking me up. Can you not fix this? And I mean, that's the only thing I see when you have these easements sitting in here. And I think that's what our director of codes is saying right here. We see these all the time, and when you put these flag lots in there like that and they're sitting there, they're always a potential. I'm not saying it happens, but you look at that, they're there. And long as they're running good and everything's lovely and the sun's shining that day and everybody's happy and everybody knows each other, but when somebody sells one of those houses and it comes in there, you've got the potential for something happening. And I don't mean that's going to happen tomorrow and that's going to happen that way, but the potential is there. And that should be a concern to us. I think when I looked in here and I saw in Ohio they did away with them, I'm just wondering, I'd like to know why they did away with them and what the problems were that they had there. I think it's there, but we're changing our the way we are here in Rutherford County in a lot of situations, and the way that we think in some things, and I just think we got possibility. Now you look at this one right here. We approved that for some reason at some time as those flag lots come in there and potential people, okay, I want it this way where they can set their own roads and come out here and go this way. When the people come in there and whatever, they said, okay, we'll just do one big road and we'll be okay. Well, that's fine. And I think that's good. I like that. But it's still there. And if this guy way back here wanted to, he could run right through the front of that house right there. And legally, I got an attorney sitting back here, but I'm not going to put him in that position right now. But I think he could go ahead and set him a road right there. But I'm just saying, you know, where are we? And it gets into what Commissioner Cush says right here, we got to think about our safety and the whole thing. And that's what I have a concern there too, because we just got through approving our roundabouts and whatever else we have for turning these pieces of equipment around, that you could start having these lanes. These are not roads, these are lanes. And I saw this during the tornado. We had fire equipment setting out on the road because where some people put houses, they didn't build roads. They said they would, but they didn't because they were way back off of the road and it cost too much to build that road. It's expensive. And it was pouring down rain that night, and when the fire engine gets there to help them in that situation, you don't put a piece of equipment that heavy out into a field, basically, because you'll never get it out. It'll sink up so quick you won't believe it. So we had to go in with smaller trucks to take care of the situation. So, you know, you've always got these things to think about and what we've got to do and what actually happens after it gets away from here. But I think, you know, what we're talking about and what we're trying to do right here is, and I think the last we had at our last meeting, some sort of brought some of these things to us. And do we want to make changes? Do we want to do some things there? So I think what staff is asking us is, okay, where do we go from here?
Doug, let me just kind of follow up with that. You've got an overlay of right-of-ways, I guess,
well, they're basically, a lot of them are, those are flags. Those are the stems of the flag lots that go back way into the back of those properties, is what those are.
I guess what I'm getting at, to follow up on what Chairman Reed was talking about, is if we restricted flag lots, there wouldn't all those things be there in the future. They would disappear. So we wouldn't be facing that in the future, Mr. Chairman, is what I'm talking about. All of those things that exist, like you just mentioned, if we restricted the things in the future, they would not exist and they wouldn't be a problem. And that's what we're talking about, is the future and not things that are in the past. This might be a problem for things that have happened, but we're looking at the future. And that's what I'm thinking that we should be talking about right now, is what we want to do in the future. And it's my suggestion, if there can be exceptions made that make sense from a planning perspective, that we restrict flag lots to one and have an out for somebody through BZA or through this to make an exception, if that's possible. That would be a recommendation, and if you're looking for a recommendation, that'd be one that I'd throw out.
I'm glad we're having this discussion, because this is one I've wrestled around with quite a bit. But Doug, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I would think the original intention of a flag lot is to access a landlocked property, or for someone to split off something, say a family wanted to break up that acreage and allow access.
I would say that's fair.
And I think we've transitioned into a design choice. And I think we need to get away from that. So the more we've talked about this, the more I'm thinking, I agree with Commissioner Phillips, we allow one, and then if it's something outside of that, they have to prove to us why it meets or why it would be a good idea to do that. And one could be allowed, or I'm okay with the Ohio method of none. but I think that's too extreme as well, because I think there's cases can be made for those landlocked properties and some things like that. But the more we've talked about this, the more I've transitioned and changed to thinking to the future, like you said. That's a design choice, and that's I'm not knocking anyone's design or their layout, but that's just poor planning for the future. I don't think we need to go that direction. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Simple statement, the more people you get involved with this, with these 6 or 8 private easement things, the more chances you have to have trouble. So the one lot, one flag lot would solve all that. if I understand that right, and I can't hardly see that house up in the center top now, but his driveway crosses 3 other people's
Yes.
private easements. What's to keep the guy behind him that's in the house right to the left of him,
Blocking it off.
just blocking him off and building a driveway?
Right, and,
There is none, is that right?
well, they're supposed to have cross-access to all these easements. That's what we would require. Now, this happened years back, you know, and this has been one of those that's kind of evolved in time. It's pretty much been in this current state for several years, but this kind of went through several iterations before ever making it to where it is now. So under our current regulations, what we would look at, and it's similar to like some of those that we looked at, like that one last month, where we told them they had to have cross-access amongst all the lots for the area that they could access, because that has happened. You know, we run into situations where people have blocked off because it was my property, I don't want them on it. It's like, well, you can't do that. That's a private access easement. Unfortunately, there's really nothing we can do about it. It becomes a, you know, a private property dispute, and then lawyers have to get involved at that point, and the judge has to make a decision. So, which gets back, I think, to what we've heard, you know, several of the comments made, not just today, but even in weeks past, months past, where, you know, the county commissioners and staff were the ones that get the phone calls about, well, what are you going to do about this? Well, there's really nothing we can do about this when it comes to private restrictions. You know, it's not, it's the correct answer. It doesn't make us feel any better when we have to say it, but I mean, that is the right answer. So, to answer your question, Mr. Whitworth, they're supposed to have cross-access, so that shouldn't happen, but, you know, it only takes one bad apple to spoil the bunch.
The reason I brought this up, I've talked to a resident or two in this subdivision. All of the residents are supposed to maintain the common driveway, and there's only 1 or 2 that's putting money forth to fix the road. So everybody else is saying, well, why am I paying for their portion of the repairs? So now you've got, I think the homeowners on this lot 7, they want to put their own driveway in. So now we're going to go from 1 driveway to 5 or more, you know. So that's something we need to be careful with too.
Once again, Mike, to be careful in the future, if we put in a road, if they put in a road, it would eliminate all of those things, right?
Yes, sir.
And-
Right.
and isn't that what we're talking about, you guys?
Sure.
Looking forward and not looking behind? We keep talking about stuff that exists, and I want to talk about stuff that's going to exist. So I don't know how else to say it. If, Doug, if there is an option for us to make exceptions, and I know that there probably will be, that makes sense. But I think, and once again, you guys correct me, and I can be corrected, okay? I would suggest that we look at limiting flag lots to one, if there can be exceptions, and you said earlier that you thought that there probably could be, and let's just eliminate all these problems. Let's just eliminate them, and as we go forward. Is this something that the comprehensive plan could take a look at as well, have some discussion as
This
far
might
as
be
subdivision
this might,
regulations?
yeah, this might be a little too into the weeds for a document like the comprehensive plan is kind of looking 30,000 foot. This is probably getting a little too much in the weeds. Now, it can make recommendations as far as, you know, certain land use restrictions, things we should look at as far as regulations go. It probably wouldn't get this specific as far as flag lot developments and things like that. Most don't. Yeah.
What if, Mr. Chairman, if I might, what if you took some of this discussion, like the 1 flag lot, thought about that for a month or so, bring this thing back to us again, if you have some additional thoughts that you come up with or problems that might create.
Sure.
And communicate that with us. But I'd like for you to take a look at putting, and it's my recommendation, if you want a motion, I'll make a motion that we look at restricting it to 1 flag lots, and you can come back with some guidelines that there can be some exceptions made to that.
No, I mean, and that's kind of what the purpose of today was in the first place. Kind of let us know which direction you want to go, let us digest that, come up with some possible options more specific than what we've listed here. I would also probably suggest not only what you're suggesting there, Mr. Phillips, but also looking at some definitions, as Commissioner P was saying, of looking at what's a driveway, what's a private road, public road, you know, coming up with some specific standards for driveways that, or private roads, if you will, that are going to access multiple lots. So I think that's part and parcel to what we're talking about.
That was our whole purpose today of doing this, just trying to get this out in the open and getting that forward.
And I
Mr. Vogel?
agree with your direction there, because I go back to what Commissioner Cush said. It needs to be a county road standards. It needs to have the drainage and everything associated with that. But my dilemma is if you have a situation where there's only 6 lots, I don't know what the cutoff number is.
Yeah.
There's a structural road template that would work for the fire trucks and everything that needs to access that without being complete county road standards, and we need to find where that is, and I think you're alluding to that in that definition you're looking for, that
Yes, sir.
a template
Yes.
that will suffice that they can maintain if it's not being taken in by the county, and I think we need to be fair in that aspect too. But I don't know what the lot cutoff is, and that's where waivers would come into place if someone's doing, if we say 8 lots or more and they do 10 or what, you know, we need to have that flexibility. But I think there's some template we can find there that would suffice in that semi-private or private instance.
Yes. Okay.
Other discussion? If not, if it's in agreement with the committee, we'll let staff do this, take what has been discussed here this morning and come back with some more recommendations.
Doug, I'd like to thank the staff for bringing this forward. You know, these are the type of things that I think you as a staff and we as a planning commission need to examine and look as we're going forward. That's once again what the comprehensive plan, I hope, is going to accomplish too, is a different look for the county going future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I think this has been some good discussion that we really need at different times. That concludes our business. Let me just mention too that our next Planning Commission meeting will be on June 12th. Here at the county courthouse, 6:00 p.m. That is a night meeting that will be going over to the business of the county here. Just a reminder to you, hope you have a good weekend that's coming up, a Memorial Day weekend. There is a Memorial Day service at the National Cemetery out here on Sunday at 1:30. I don't know how many of you have ever made that service. I suggest that you do that if you have the opportunity to do so. It's very touching to do that. They do a great job of doing that out there, and let's remember what this weekend is really about. It's not going to the lake and hot dogs and hamburgers. It's about remembering those and what they've given to us over the years. So appreciate all of you being here. We are adjourned.